This podcast uses bad words. If you don't like bad words or you don't like your kids to hear bad words, this is this is bad. Go change it. Go to Disney Plus or something and watch Andor kill a couple guys in cold blood because that's family. Today on Reef Beef, we have a special guest, Keith Berkelhamer, and we're going to talk about some new stuff going on in the Secret Home Lab. We're going to see what's going on with Ben, and we're going to have some beefs. But mostly, we're going to talk to Keith about Keith and ReefBum. So welcome to the show. This is Reef Beef. Ben, what's going on in your reefing world?
I had to run home right before the show was being recorded because I was installing 4 new G6 Radions on a tank. And I actually had to tell the client, ask him if I could come back tomorrow because I wasn't going to make it.
Wow. So what was taking so long to install them?
He had a bunch of old AIs up there and a couple eco-exotic photo cannons. And I had to take all that down. And that wasn't fun. And then just putting it was like a 90-inch long rail for the G6s and all the armature and all that. I was cutting it too close.
So you said, "Fuck you, client, I got something to do."
No, he's cool. I just told him, I was honest with him. I said I was recording a YouTube show, and he was like, "That's cool." And
that wasn't as bad, Ben, was when you were on my show and you were actually doing the Skype call from the car.
Oh, yeah, this one guy got mad in the comments section on that show.
I thought that was so awesome, and the whole thing in the comments was so funny.
Yeah.
Did you get any more grief for that, Keith, or was that over?
No, I think that was just kind of like somebody in the chat, like, that was funny. You know, yeah. It was kind of like it looked like he was driving and multitasking at the same time.
Yes.
What's going on here? New corals for spawning from Joe Caparata from Unique Corals, who sponsored us but then fired us. But he's still nice enough to get us these corals.
Do tell.
So I'm very excited about this. What time is that? I got to keep an eye. Oh no, we'll be done before it's sunset. So they're Millipora from the Great Barrier Reef, and if all goes well, I'll have a spawn here in November, and I'm excited about that. Like I said, at MACNA, I got all excited about everything again, so I'm excited about this. And I'll just do kind of my beef now a little bit. These came in, they were in LA, and then they got shipped to me via Southwest into Oakland, okay? So it's an hour flight in state. I go to pick them up, and I get all this grief from the Southwest people. They're like, "Well, what's in the box?" And I'm like, "Well, it's corals." It's like, "Oh, well, Fish and Game Agriculture needs to inspect that." I was like, "What?" I said, "It's in state." He's like, "Well, no. If you've gone to SFO, they wouldn't have to inspect it." I went, "What?" He said, "Yeah, every place is different, and because it's Friday, they won't be here till Monday." And I went,
"Oh!"
And I said, "Well, how am I supposed to know that? Shouldn't the person who accepted the box said something about that?" And they said, "Well, yeah." And I said, "Well, they didn't." I was much less of a dick than I'm going to portray myself as now, and it went round and round for a while. And the guy who was helping me was saying that he breeds saltwater stuff, and the plants that we have in our saltwater aquariums. And I went, "Oh, you don't know what you're talking about, because
the plants,
they're not plants." And he was on the phone for a while, and he comes out and he says, "Well, okay, we're gonna work it out. They just want me to give them the paperwork on the box." And in my head, I went, "You have no idea what's going on. There is no paperwork with these animals because they're in state already. They've already been imported. They do not need paperwork to go anywhere else in the country." And then they couldn't find the boxes for 2 hours. And as soon as they realized they couldn't find the boxes, they were really nice to me. And they're like, oh no, you're going to get it. It's going to be fine. Because they had said something like, oh, well, if they filled it out wrong intentionally, they could be in trouble. I was like, they didn't fill it out wrong intentionally. We went through all that, and then they were trying to be really nice to me. And then they came, and the guy was like, well, since it wasn't here within an hour, you should ask for a refund, and I'll print you a receipt that says. And he didn't have any paperwork, and it was fine, and it was very confusing. So I got them, and they're all good. They look great. Don't know if they have eggs in them because I haven't checked them yet. But the beef is, to anybody who thinks that these animals that are flown halfway around the world should be cheap, they've never dealt with a gate agent before trying to get animals in. There's when I talked to Joe about it, he was like, welcome to my life. It's like, well, if that's your life, man, everything should be way more expensive. If you have to deal with this kind of BS all the time, which you do, then, man, everyone should just relax, and things should be more, what they're worth rather than the lowest possible price. Says I.
I've worked at a store once where we did transshipping several times, and they put me in charge of picking the stuff up from the airport from a transship. And if you've ever done that before, it is a freaking nightmare.
Yeah. What were you going to say, Keith?
I was going to say,
on a scale.
I sent Ben some beefs, I guess, a couple of weeks ago, and yeah, one of them is like shipping. I got some beefs with shipping these days, but
what
you want to hear my beefs?
Keith beef.
No, we'd rather just hear that you had some beefs and never find out what they are.
Well, probe a little bit.
What are your beefs on shipping, Keith?
Do it.
It's pardon my French, but it's a shit show. I think that well, the cost of freight is through the roof, right?
Yeah.
And I think with COVID and all that stuff, that's only part of it at this point in time. I think the big issue is just staffing issues and not having enough folks to really do the job that they have done in the past. I use UPS to ship corals. I had used FedEx in the past, and FedEx I found to be like very unreliable years ago.
Yeah. And
I've heard not much has changed, but UPS used to be like just solid as a rock for me. But lately, like the last 6 months, I've had packages that have not made it next day. I've had situations where I had a customer have a package held for pickup in the customer center, and the UPS could not find this package. It was in their hub at that city, but they could not find it to deliver it to the customer on the same day. So, and then last week I shipped out 2 packages to a couple of customers, and so I always follow the tracking. The next day to see where the packages are, if there's any problems or any issues. And the tracking didn't change. I live in Vermont, and so the tracking said that it was the last tracking was like 7:00 p.m. in Vermont. So I have a third party company that handles my UPS shipping, and I called my account rep, and I was like, hey, can you look into this for me? It's kind of concerning to me that it's like 12 noon the next day, and these packages apparently were last scanned in Vermont the night before. What's going on? Because you can't call these customer centers. There's no direct line to these customer centers. So I assumed that my rep could at least get through somehow to somebody and be like, hey, is the thing still, the package is still there? Because I was like, if they are, I'm going to run out there 45 minutes away in my car and pick them up, so I could just put them back into the frag tank, so that these corals are not going to die by being in transit for 2 days, or what have you. So it ended up, I was like, screw it. I'm gonna, I never heard back from my account rep. I was like, screw it. I'm gonna just take a trip out there and see what's going on. And sure enough, the packages were still in Vermont. So I took them back to my house and put them back, the corals back into the tank. And I'll be shipping them out again this week. But just the price alone, I think in terms of what I'm paying these days for shipping is just crazy in terms of the price increases for next day air.
Yeah.
It's and listen, I think it's an industry-wide issue, and the cost for shipping, for freight, we're seeing with fish, right? fish right now are so expensive. And I think a big reason that is the case is because of the cost of freight, getting them from, one part of the world to the next part of the world.
And
So,
is that hurting your business, or are people just kind of absorbing it?
I mean, it's, I think, I've had to raise prices a little bit. It's, it's tough. It's tough on business, I think. And it's tough on me because I don't have the time to deal with all that stuff. And it's just kind of like it's a lot of drama sometimes that goes around, and it's all on me too, because it's all on the shipper, right?
Right.
Because the customer is covered. If a package ends up going, not getting there the day it's supposed to get there and arrives 2 days late, then it's going to be on me. I could file a claim with UPS and all that fun stuff, but they're, you're not always going to get your money back. So you have to insure the packages and stuff like that. So, for me, I've decided to take some additional steps to make sure, like, if my packages are 2 days, a day late, and 2 days in transit, that the corals that I'm shipping are going to actually be able to survive, that extended time frame. So I'm right, these days I'm shooting oxygen into the bags. I'm using some activated carbon in case there is, some die-off to help, absorb some of the toxins, the dying bacteria.
Sure.
So, it costs me extra money now, and I have to use bigger boxes. So it's not good.
Yeah.
But it's an issue I don't think you see a lot of people talking about.
No, I think we've talked about it before, that I think most reef aquarists are really just looking at bottom line, which it's a hobby and that's what they should be. And I think there's too many vendors who are just willing to absorb death and not care about it and just shine it on, or push it down the road a little bit. So I think that's why I think we don't hear that much about it, because otherwise it's, I think people are scared to say anything negative about anything because they think that will reflect badly and somehow translate into bad business. It's always seemed to me like I'd rather hear what's going on and know what's going on rather than just have no information at all.
Yeah, in the same vein, I always try to talk my customers into getting their coral shipped to a UPS customer center near them to cut down on the transit time. And a very, very, very small percentage of my customers actually do that without me prompting them to do it. So it's one less leg of the journey. The corals don't have to bounce around on a hot delivery truck potentially on the end of the shipment. So I think that if you can get corals to somebody sooner rather than later, and they're getting, being less stressed by not having an additional leg of the journey, that's something that we should all be considering, very seriously as people that buy corals online. I think that's something that is just not done enough. And I think that's something I would love to see happen more so.
Does that cost any more to have the package delivered right to the UPS store?
It actually is $5 cheaper. So, for the shipper, you're saving $5 by having it held at a customer center.
And with FedEx, it's the same price, but it's going, at least in FedEx, it's going to an air-conditioned place. It's not sitting out in the sun or sitting in a hot van.
I don't know.
FedEx by me sucks. So I have it all shipped to the Kinko's, and I go pick it up at the Kinko's. And I think you're absolutely spot on. Everyone demand, just have it all shipped to the UPS place near you, and you can pick it up at your convenience after 10 o'clock because it's going to go there first. The van's going to go there first. Keith, smart.
Yes. No. So I always try to be an advocate for that in terms of the customer centers. I know it's not always possible. I mean, sometimes I'll punch in an address for a customer and it'll say this person is in an extended delivery area, which means that they guarantee delivery by the end of the day. So, in California, if I'm shipping it from Vermont to California, end of the day for them is 7 p.m. So that could be 10 p.m. right?
Yeah.
Eastern time. And I'm packing them, bagging them up like 3 o'clock my time. So that's that makes a big difference potentially.
Sure, and even worse, through experience out here, end of the day means whatever they want it to. So sometimes they've extended the hours of their delivery people, and end of the day is 9 p.m. It's there's no, and like you say, you can't. I'm so happy to be a little more experienced, or which is another way to say old, but that I'm not yelling at the FedEx people anymore, because that's just a waste of everyone's time. They can't. It's so big and so understaffed that nobody
Right.
knows anything, and so you just gotta hope.
Right. The days of actually calling up a customer representative and like talking to a human being at UPS or FedEx that can actually help you. I don't think you can actually do that with UPS.
Yeah,
I have to like,
they can't help you. I don't know if you can get a person, but if you can, they go, well, the website shows the same thing you're seeing. And you're like, so let's see. Shipping sucks. Don't ship on Fridays. Don't do
ship
Saturday.
on Fridays.
Don't ship. Don't even
I don't,
ship.
I don't ship on Thursdays.
Yeah. Don't even
don't
ship
ship
on
Thursdays.
Thursdays. Because
Yeah.
there's nothing good. If something bad happens, nothing happens till Monday. So Thursday is the last day you want it to arrive.
Yes.
Earlier in the week is better. Don't ship when it's freaking freezing cold, either
No.
where it's leaving or going to, or if there's huge storms. What other shipping advice do you have?
Well, as a shipper, I certainly look at the weather reports. I look at the weather report, on my end. I look at the weather report on the customer's end, and I look at the weather report on the the hub in between. So there's always a hub between where you're shipping and where the destination is, unless you're very close to that hub. So, for me, it's Louisville for UPS. So I'm always looking at the weather forecast for Louisville if packages are going west. If they're going south, then usually it's going through Philly. So I'll look at the Philadelphia weather report.
Right.
So yeah, my advice is always be aware of the weather. Super cold, hold off. Super hot, hold off. Even if you're the customer and you've got the company that the online coral vendor or whatever is shipping fish or their corals. I think the customers have got to be proactive too. Like, hey, maybe it's not a good idea to ship. But I think a lot of good advice is to have very open lines of communication, and don't always be in a rush to get your corals. I think you got to like really play it safe. And so what I mentioned before is I'm starting to use oxygen and starting to use activated carbon. I did some experiments, and I was going to put a video together on this thing, but I had some corals that in my experiment that lasted 5 days, in the bags with oxygen and activated carbon. But I think temperature is the biggest factor. I think temperature is the biggest factor, because when I did that experiment, I think it was like maybe 70 degrees.
Yeah.
That the coral sat in the water for about 5 days. So weather is huge.
When we would ship anything from wherever we were collecting it, when I worked at the public aquarium, we would often put temperature loggers, data loggers in the box to see what the temperature did over time. And man, it can get really cold in those boxes, and it can get really hot in those boxes. And those temperature loggers are like $20 now.
Yeah.
So you can always put them in a self-stamped envelope and see what's happening. So you can get a little more data about what's going on in your roots. But yeah, temperature is the problem. And you get both extremes on one shipment, and you're just doomed. Oh
yeah, it's tough.
Yeah, don't ship Thanksgiving week or Christmas week.
Yeah.
Yeah, in fact,
declare the holidays.
I almost want to say from the week before Thanksgiving to the week after New Year's, just use your gift certificates, but have them ship it later, because you might get it, but you might pull your hair out. I hate to say that to people who like you who sell stuff, but man.
No, I believe in that. I mean, I've sat on orders for like 2 months sometimes. This past summer was super, super hot, like in California.
Yeah.
right? Right. You know that. And so, you know, I think I had an order that was placed at the beginning of June. I didn't ship it until like middle of August or end of August or something like that. So
Wow.
I think, you know, if you're going to buy stuff from vendors, then if they can, you know, have some patience in terms of being able to hold on to stuff. And that's tough. You know, listen, that's tough. I'm a mom and pop operation. So you know, I have probably more flexibility
Yeah.
to do that for customers versus some of the big online coral vendors.
How do people? Where do people go to see your stock and buy stuff from you?
ReefBum.com.
Reefbum.com.
Yeah.
Reefbum.com. Look at the top of my
So
head as I
recently-
talk to my mic.
Recently, you posted a real pretty Oregon blue tort on there. I tried to
Oh yeah.
give you a little boost or whatever by throwing it on the Reef Beef Facebook.
Yeah.
But that was gorgeous.
Yeah, that's my favorite coral. That it's strikingly blue, you know, and you know, people with tanks that are lit with you know, heavy blue spectrum lighting, you're not going to kind of see that sort of blue popping. But I have a Oregon blue tort in every one of my display tanks.
Nice.
My 2 display tanks.
And I would
Hey Ben,
Hey, Richard.
I love the saltwateraquarium.com. Do you know why?
Well, I know one reason, because they have 3 locations across the United States to get you your product. No, you
going.
tell me why.
No, finish that one. That was going to be
Well, they
mine, but you
also-
finish it.
Oh, I took yours. Well, they also have a mobile app that makes it easier
Now you
to order your stuff.
Now you took my second one.
That's 2. I got 2. I got
didn't,
2.
You didn't finish either one of them though.
There's a mobile app that makes it easier to order goods, and they have 3 locations, and I'm holding up 4, and they have 3 locations across the continental United States to help you get your
Yes.
order faster.
Yes. I like them too because they got everything I need, almost everything, especially F-Aptasia. Apparently, that's what F-Aptasia and sea swirls are. These are the the 2 things that I keep ordering from them because they're consumables. And spin streams, not sea swirls, spin streams.
Spin stream. Yeah.
Yeah, because they.
I also like them because Kenneth is bald.
That's true. That's the main reason why I like them. And they've got the cleanup crews and stuff that come from fishless systems, so they're not going to have any diseases. And I like the way those bags are done. I just like them a lot. I've used them for a long time, and I'm happy that they're sponsoring our show. So go check them out at the link below, and make sure you write, the only reason I shop at saltwateraquarium.com is because of Ben Johnson and Reef Beef. Check it out. Thank you.
and I would
I'm interested in how you got into keeping reef tanks at all, and then how you moved from that into the octopus-like fingers, tentacles in every single facet of reef keeping, from coral farming and sales to your online presence in your show ReefBum.
Rapping with ReefBum.
Rapping with ReefBum.
So you want my story, huh?
I want your story as much as it is you'll give.
I mean, when I was growing up, my dad kept saltwater fish only tanks. So he wasn't keeping reef tanks back when I was growing up, and we were always going to fish stores together, local fish stores, to pick out fish for his tanks. He had like a 125-gallon tank. I think it was his biggest saltwater fish tank. And I remember when we went on vacation once to Jamaica that he actually bought some bleached coral and brought it back on the plane.
Yeah.
Because that was the thing back in those days, was
Yeah.
to have dead coral, big like staghorns and big, I don't know what those like kind of large cupping corals are with kind of branches, elkhorn coral, right? Is that what?
Pagoda cup, usually pagoda.
No, it was like a big plating with branches, kind of. I think they called them like an elkhorn coral.
Oh yeah, that's palmata.
Yeah. Okay.
And then you used to pull them out and put them in the dishwasher every once in a while to clean
Yeah.
them.
No,
right?
he bleached them.
Yeah.
Bleached them to get all the algae off of them
Yeah.
and stuff like that. So that's kind of like how I was exposed to it, and then I went away to college, and I think then I got my first job, and it was like a long time before I actually started keeping tanks on my own. So it was like when I had my first job living in New York City, and my future wife and I went to the San Gennaro Festival, which is a big festival down in Little Italy in Lower Manhattan. It's like a celebration of there's just a lot of it's like a big gigantic street fair with some amusement rides and some games that if you don't watch it, you could actually get swindled out of a lot of money. But
What games
had a
at the
buddy.
Midway are a scam?
I had a buddy like that lost like hundreds of dollars at this one little innocent arcade game because it was there was a guy, like a fast talking guy, and you want to double your money? You want to double your money? Oh, one more time.
Awesome.
So
Awesome that works.
There was a whole bunch. There was like this one game where the game where they had like these fish bowls with Siamese fighting fish. No, goldfish. There was goldfish in these fish bowls, and you had to take ping pong balls.
Yeah.
The ping pong ball, and wow, lo and behold, one of my ping pong balls landed in the goldfish bowl, one of these goldfish bowls. So I won this goldfish, and had to take it home that night. And so the next day, I think I ended up going to like a it wasn't a local fish store in New York City. It was like one of those chain retail stores, Petland Discounts, I think was the name of the chain. And I bought like a 2-gallon little tank for the goldfish and promptly killed it probably like a week or two later. Didn't know what I was doing. And then I got into freshwater. This is what I kind of started. And I bought a 29-gallon freshwater tank because one of the it actually was a local fish store in Manhattan that had this beautiful display of a freshwater tank with plants in it, live plants, and had these Congo tetras in it.
It's great fish.
Which I was like just mesmerized by these Congo tetras. Congo tetras. I think there was other tetras in it. So I was like, man, I want to like just replicate that. And I did that for a while. I wasn't that successful. I couldn't keep the plants alive. And so after a while, I started doing a lot of reading about the reef keeping hobby. I read at least one of Julian and Charles Delbeek's books. I think I read a book by Martin Moe. I was just, back in the day, that's how you learned about the hobby, was actually buying a book and reading about it.
Yeah,
right?
They're all right up there. The Reef Aquarium Volume 1, I think, was out in 96.
Yeah.
94, 95, 96. So, and that's like the textbook of the hobby. So,
yeah. No, so I read FAMA magazine, Freshwater Marine Aquarium magazine, and I even I wrote Julian he had a column in there called Reef Notes, I think it was called.
Yeah.
Yes. And so I wrote Julian a letter. This was actually when I had a reef tank going, and it was to ask him a question about an algae issue that I had, and he actually responded in the publication, which was so freaking awesome.
Dear Julian, I never thought this would happen to me, but I'm writing to tell you about this story.
And then I went to one of these. Remember the IMAC conferences?
I do.
We used to have in Chicago. I went to one of those, and I ran into Julian, and I told him about the story, and I thanked him and all that stuff. And of course, now it's a thrill to have him, participate in my live streams. But
he's a great.
So yeah, my first, I think my first reef tank was a 90-gallon reef tank that I ordered over the phone from some local fish store. I think they were somewhere in the Carolinas. And this thing was delivered by a freight truck to Midtown Manhattan. And,
way you go.
My wife, who was my girlfriend at the time, were in an apartment, 4th floor, 5th floor apartment, but it had an elevator.
Okay.
And yeah, so I was like off to the races. It was a horrible looking reef tank. I mean, it was like this. The aquascape was just like a layer of bricks. The rock was just a lot of rock in there. It was just stacked up like a brick wall.
Yeah. And
it did not look at all like natural, like a reefscape or anything. It just was ridiculous looking. So
what was the first coral you remember putting in there?
I was really into clams. So it might have been a clam.
Okay.
You know,
right.
yeah.
And how was
So
it?
there were
How was it filtered?
bio balls.
Bioballs
I,
in a sump or in a
yeah,
chamber?
no,
Nice.
in a sump. Bio
Awesome.
balls in a sump.
Were you part of or had run-ins with the Reef Mafia in New York around that time?
Who's in the Reef Mafia again?
Randy and
Yeah.
Craig and Tony Vargas, I think,
Joe.
and Joe Waiulo and um,
Bob Stark.
Bob Stark, all
Yeah.
those guys. Yeah.
I know some of those guys. Yeah, I mean Randy and Bob. There were some other folks. I was going to those Manhattan Reef frag swaps, I believe, at that point in time. So yeah, I knew a lot of those folks.
Those were really fun.
So
How did you get from that to selling stuff and what's going on behind you?
on this new house, my first real reef tank was like an in-wall 120-gallon reef tank, and I still use too much rock in that reef tank. But that's when I got into the SBS thing, you know. So that was
Okay.
kind of like my first real serious effort to SBS. And that was back when you could buy whole colonies, you know, maricultured colonies. So I would always go. There was like what's that website? It's just the name is I'm
Garf?
blanking out. Well, Garf, I'm sure I ordered stuff
Or
from Garf.
Tropicorium?
But I know you, yeah,
Dick
Tropicorium.
Perrin?
But what's the big one? Like Reefer Madness. That's it. Reefer
Okay.
Madness.
Oh, I remember that.
Okay.
That they used to have the most amazing colonies for sale, and there was like a whole WYSIWYG thing. And when they posted them, they would like just get snapped up. So that was like probably the first big, you know, the start of all the online buying, buying of corals. I think was Reefer Madness. That was like
Didn't
the first big one.
They had the goofy ads where it was like a guy and they had coral
Yeah.
colors coming out. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
I remember.
Yeah, yeah.
Like in
and,
FAM.
And they used to like find these most amazing blue teardrop maxima clams
They were so
that
cool.
they were so cool. And you know what? They were actually pretty, they were not difficult to keep, because I remember buying some and those things lived for a while. So yeah, that first reef tank that I had, the first real reef tank that was SPS dominant had a lot of the maricultured colonies in it. No frags whatsoever.
No,
And,
frags didn't exist.
No, so I'm sure I had acro-eating flatworms. I'm sure I had red bugs. I'm sure I had every pest known. And back then, nobody really knew that they had this stuff in their tanks, right? I mean, I think it was just kind of like a given that, you had hitchhikers that came along with this stuff.
Yeah,
So-
the thought was everything is good.
Yep. Yep.
Because we didn't know anything, and then it started to be like, wait a minute,
Something's not right with my corals. It's looking a
wait a-
little ill.
wait a minute.
And then, so then we moved to Connecticut, a bigger house. I was like 8 years in Westchester. And then we moved to a bigger house and a lot more room. So I had this kind of awesome living room that I set up a 225-gallon tank. So I went bigger, 225-gallon tank. I plumbed it through the floor of that living room down into the basement. So I had a whole shitload of room for equipment that, is when I had, I got a big, it was like a 90-gallon custom acrylic stump that I had made from a local fish store. I had a 50-inch dual Beckett MTC protein skimmer. This thing was like a freaking beast, but it was awesome. I mean, it was so consistent. It was just great.
Right. So what people, if you don't know what a Beckett skimmer, Beckett downdraft is, you would push a lot of water through this Beckett injector, and it would suck air in, and you needed to push like a lot of water. So you needed a high pressure pump, and it would make a crap ton of bubbles. And those,
Yes.
and they were fantastic, and people loved them. The problem is they were such space and energy hogs that people got away from them. But man, did they produce foam.
It was like the best skimmer I ever had, I think. And now I use the needle wheel, like the Royal Exclusive Bubble King, double cone Bubble King skimmers. And I love them. I love them. But they're certainly a lot more compact than that 50-inch tall skimmer. But
2 Beckett injectors that you
Yeah,
had to take apart.
MTC was Marine Technical Concepts. I remember them.
Yes, they. I still have a calcium reactor, dual chamber calcium reactor that they made. It was I forget the guy's name, but he was kind of a bit of an oddball. The guy that ran MTC. He was based in New Jersey.
Well, that was a part
Aren't
of
we
the,
all?
that not anymore. I think part of the love back then was how insane people in the hobby and at fish stores were.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I remember we had 3 fish stores, and one was like clean and beautiful and nice, and they were all within a block of each other, and but they didn't have much salt water. The other one was pretty great, but they were doing mostly maintenance out of it. And then there was this crap, just junkyard, you know, like if you took Dirk's booth, but like made it disgusting and dirty and just piles of crap everywhere. But if you needed something, that's where you went to dig through his piles and get a part and maybe buy a Red Devil. It was the weirdest store in the world, but it was awesome because they had every single part.
Yeah.
Anyway.
So yeah, so the tank, the 225 gallon tank in Connecticut was really like that's when I kind of like the hobby for me kicked into overdrive. That's when I started, putting frags in the tank versus, I bought some colonies. There was a couple of really good local fish stores. I think they're still around. House of Fins in Greenwich.
Yeah.
It's a very well-known place.
Rob.
And Greenwich Aquarium, which is nearby. And so I used to do all my shopping there. And I bought like the colonies I bought were like bright pink bird's nest or green bird's nest. I loved the colors on those things. And that's kind of like my thing is I like corals that really pop. And you don't see a lot of people that have bird's nest corals, whether they're bright pink or green, neon green in their tanks anymore.
Yeah.
It's a lot different.
I do too.
Yeah.
They grow so fast once they get, either they die or they take over. And so people don't want them. And it's like, you're crazy. If you need to fill a space,
Right.
Ponape or a pink bird's nest.
Oh, you can't beat it. Yeah. I mean, mine got so big that they just kind of outgrew themselves and the skeletons, would die at the base. Just kind of like keep growing and growing and growing. And by all of a sudden, like half your coral's dead, but the top half is alive. And it's like, you got to do some major fragging on that thing. But yeah, so that's kind of like when I started first getting into the whole putting frags into the tanks and getting some interesting stuff. The Tyree Purple Monster was a coral that grew like a weed for me back then.
Do you have any?
I do right now. Yeah. Not from that colony, not from those colonies that I had, but
We can't.
I've got.
I'll be checking your website because we can't get it out here anymore.
Why not?
Just no one's got it. People can't keep it.
Right. Well, I mean, I've got one that's about as big as this.
Damn. What is
bullshit
that?
button? It's like one of those Staples buttons.
You press it and it says bullshit?
Yeah,
That's
about
useful.
as big as that. And well, so I've got one mini colony growing out in one of my frag tanks on one system, and then the other system, actually in my 225 gallon Peninsula tank, I got a frag that's been growing out, but it's a super slow grower for me these days. But back then, when I had that tank in Connecticut, it grew like a weed for me. So go figure.
I want to try it again because I keep my water the same shitty quality I used to keep it in. Yeah, so I think it'll probably grow pretty well for me.
Yeah, so it's that's my favorite coral, and that's number one. Then the Oregon Blue Tor is number two.
Yeah, it was that and the Ondata were the big three.
Yes,
and
yes,
I actually had for a long time the base piece of the original Ondata, the Tyree Ondata. I had piece that it all now Ondata comes in all the time, but like I had that one, like we knew I got it from Eddie, who had got it from Steve, and when Eddie closed down, we had that one piece, and that was exciting until no one cared anymore.
So that was like the first tank that I started selling frags, but I was going, I was swapping frags. I was like posting on Manhattan Reefs, like, hey, got some frags for sale. And so it was, just people that knew me, I was selling locally. I wasn't, at that point, I wasn't shipping. Then I started shipping and I really didn't know what the hell I was doing when I was shipping. I mean, I think there was bags that like just, were leaking and all that stuff. And so, yeah, that's kind of like when I started to do that sort of thing. And, I was kind of surprised how much you could help support the hobby by, selling frags and what have you. And, so my main career was in the media business. So I spent 26 years working for Turner Broadcasting and CNN on the advertising part of the business. And, so that I was a market researcher. That was my vocation. That was, but, moving out of the city and living in Westchester and then Connecticut, I had a long commute to Manhattan. My commute at the end when we were out in Connecticut was 4 hours round trip every day. 4 hours round trip.
That's a long time.
Killing me.
Yeah.
Killing me, So about 8 years ago, there was one of the corporate merger. One of the corporate mergers happened with Time Warner, Turner Time Warner, and I think it might have been the AOL. No, AOL was before this happened. It might have been. I lost track of all the companies that took us over, but it was one of those situations where a merger was happening and there was going to be a bloodbath in terms of a lot of people being let go. I had a contract that was running out at the same time that they were planning all these layoffs, and I'd accumulated a lot of time. I spent 21 years with that company, so they were giving out some packages, and my wife and I were at a crossroads in terms of we were empty nesters, so things had kind of changed in terms of our situation. We had been vacationing up in Vermont. I'm a big skier, so kind of saw it as an opportunity. Is like, this is a different chapter in life. Let's try to do something different instead of the corporate world. Let me try to be an entrepreneur. So when we moved up here, I was doing more of consulting for media, market research. I was doing that, but I also started ReefBum about 8 years ago, whatever it was. And, launched a website. I wasn't selling frags at that point in time. So started blogging, started doing some videos on YouTube, and I started writing a book. And after a few years, I finished a book, and it. So yeah, I just decided to take my passion, that hobby, and turn it into a business. And the first tank in Vermont was this one, which is a 187-gallon tank that I started up, and I had a lot of when I started that tank up, I had taken a break of a few years between the time I broke my tank down in Connecticut and the time that I started it up here in Vermont. So it was like 2 or 3 years off, and things had kind of like changed at that point for me. There was a lot of new things going on in the hobby. There was a lot of things that were different, and one of the big things was the type of rock people used to start reef tanks. And I talked a lot about this when I first started my live stream, in terms of how much I hated, my experience using dry rock. But looking back at my experience with the dry rock, I know I didn't execute properly on that. So, I started that tank. Yeah, I started that tank with dry rock only. It was way too sterile and live sand. And I just had one issue after another with that tank. I didn't seed it with any bacteria. At the beginning, I put a lot of nitrifying bacteria in the thing, but there was no bacteria that was being added after that. There was no live rock that was, put into that tank. And, it was because you couldn't, at that point in time, live rock became very scarce, impossible to get.
Right. And that was around the time, too, when everyone started thinking, people, the pendulum had swung from, all hitchhikers are great to anything is bad.
Right. And that was one of the big reasons why I was like, all right, I'm digging this whole dry rock thing. I'm not going to have to worry about hitchhikers. But lo and behold, pretty much every hitchhiker that I, was trying to avoid ended up in that tank anyway, because they hitchhiked in on corals.
Yes.
Yes. Yeah.
It's very hard to not get them.
Yes. Yes. So, that was the first tank I started in. And after 2 years of like one issue after another, I completely redid it. I sucked it dry. I took all the water out. I sold all the livestock, and we went down to Florida for vacation, and I found some Haitian live rock in a local fish store, and I bought like 127 pounds of this Haitian live rock that I took back home in the airplane, and had to pay about $450 to do that.
Sure.
Because initially the guy quoted me a price of like, I think it might have been like $700-800, and because I had a bunch of different boxes, but the SkyCap guy at the airport consolidated the rock in the boxes for me. So once I put that live rock and restarted the tank, it was just it was off to the races in terms of the coral growth and what have you. And recently I just I pulled it all out because the coral had just grown in way too much. Like 95% of the rock facing towards the light was encrusted with coral, and colonies were choking one another out. And so it was time to do a big reboot.
And I would.
Hey, Beefers, we could really use your help with the membership. If you go to reefbeefpodcast.com/membership, the $8 a month membership gets you ability to ask us questions if you think we could answer them for you, and we'll answer them.
It also gives you a 10% off coupon for Reef Beef merchandise.
Access to buy the members T-shirt.
We're also on Discord if you want. I don't know if you want to, but if you want to go on Discord, we're on there.
Yeah, and your name will be color aligned to your Discord, to your membership level, and you'll get our eternal gratitude. Thanks, Beefers.
And I would.
As a frag selling business and a multimedia conglomerate, you probably need. Do you think you need both? Every
media conglomerate.
Everybody says, "I'm going to sell frags. I'm going to make money," and they usually end up, killing their family. But that's overly harsh. I didn't really mean that. It usually doesn't work out. What do you think made it work out for you?
Well, media conglomerate, all kidding aside, I think YouTube for me has certainly been a major way that people have found me.
Yeah.
And I think, the live stream definitely gave me a lot of visibility. I knew years ago that I wanted to do a live stream because I kind of came up with a name a long time before I actually started the live stream. I was like, yeah, Rapping with ReefBum, that would be a cool name.
That's a good name.
And I just kind of like thought about it for a couple of years and just didn't do anything about it. And then finally I started the live stream and I was like, all right, so what am I going to do? I guess I could have guests on and interview guests and I know a few people, so I can invite the people that I know, right off the bat and book them up. But I was like, man, what am I going to do after that? So at that point in time, I just started reaching out to I've reached out to you. Yeah, Rich, and
the bottom of the barrel.
I reached out to all the big names.
Oh, okay, I'll take that.
I was like, what the hell? I'll just ask, if they want to be on this live stream, even though nobody's watching. Then we'll just have these conversations and see what happens. I mean, you guys started a show from scratch. You know what it's all about in terms of trying to build up viewership. It's not easy.
Yeah, well, we really don't, because we're idiots, and we really didn't want to do any of that stuff. It's why we don't have a live stream, right? Because that takes planning and effort to actually be there on time and do it. And we would probably be just a terrible, no edit show if it wasn't for Snowman, who came in and said, so Snowman, we're just the on air. Without Snowman, we say it all the time. Neither Ben or I have the drive to do any of that stuff anymore. I don't want to edit anymore. I want to play with my tanks. So
it's a lot of work.
It's a lot of work, right? And then you've got the shipping on top of that. It's so much more than people think.
Oh yeah. In terms of the live stream, I'll spend a couple hours, like maybe an hour or sometimes 2 hours crafting questions and an outline for my guests. When I have you guys on, I'll try to figure out some stuff to talk about, even though it's like live and you get people that ask questions like on the fly. But yeah, man, it's not easy because, you got to do your research. You got to figure, find out what your guests are all about. I don't want to look like an idiot.
Right.
So you got to do your homework. You got to spend a lot of time. Then you got to spend time getting guests and booking guests and And you know, I guess the show part is the easy part because that's live and boom, it's instant content. You don't have to worry about editing it.
Right.
But hey, you know, Snowman on your end is I guess that's his or her or a man, so his job.
Maybe.
But
Or is it?
Maybe.
yeah, what's behind Snowman there?
It's all well. We keep threatening to have Snowman on, blacked out with a voice modulator. We're trying to convince Snowman keeps not wanting to do that, but I think we're breaking through that wall. I wanna get to more of your beefs. Ben, do you have any other questions about Keith's history and setup and the amazing amount of work that I think he does to do both sections of the business?
I mean, now what I'll say now is that now that I have two different systems, I've got about 800 gallons of you know, tanks. I've got 6 different tanks. I got these 2 display tanks, and I've got 3 frag tanks. One's a 75 and 2 are 50-gallon frag tanks that are plumbed into these display tanks. And I also have a quarantine tank that's a standalone 20-gallon quarantine tank. So just the work alone in terms of spending time with those tanks and taking care of those tanks is a lot of work. But you know, so you throw that in plus the business side in terms of doing the show, in terms of like also doing other YouTube videos and editing that stuff, trying to like keep up with blogs. And I haven't been doing a good job keeping up with blogs. But I also, you know, I got frag orders, and I also I sell some equipment. I don't do a lot of business on the equipment end, but you know, there's that sort of thing. There's, you know, you got to handle correspondence from you know, people that are watching you or customers that are asking a question. I got a cool thing that happened to me recently. I got a letter from a guy in prison that
Ben gets a lot of those.
Really? You get a lot of, okay.
I'm in prison.
You're in prison. Yeah. This guy got a hold of my book. I think he basically he saw one of my tanks featured at my 187 gallon tank was featured in Coral magazine back in November, December. And so the guy saw the article in Coral magazine. I think he saw the reference to the book that I had written, and he had his family order the book, and he
Great.
So he wrote me a letter, but he said he was a little bit bummed at me because I didn't include references at the end of the book for other books that I thought were worthwhile for him, you know, other readers to check out.
Interesting.
So I wrote him back, and that was an interesting correspondence. And there was another guy that
very cool.
Yeah, there's another guy from Nepal that sent me this letter. Wrote a handwritten letter from Nepal, and somehow he found me, and I'm not even sure I was able to write him back because I don't know how to. I'm not sure about the return address or what have you, but I'm sure you guys have some really good stories yourselves.
That is fantastic. So you have 2 systems back there, and everything is plumbed into those 2 systems.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
And what would you say are the 2 or 3 most important types of pieces of equipment that you need on every system?
Kalkwasser has really been big for me the last year or so. So I've been following the Chris Meckley at ACI Aquaculture method in terms of dosing kalkwasser. I have 2 30-gallon bins for each system of kalkwasser in that I dose, you know, constantly to the systems. Basically, what I'm trying to do is to replace everything that's evaporated overnight. So whatever evaporates is supposed to evaporate on a 24-hour basis. I'm trying to like replace it when on the reverse light cycle, you know, overnight. Okay. So I think I've been getting some serious growth with that. And I think lighting is certainly very important. I've got metal halides on this tank, and I've got LEDs, the GHL nitros on this tank. And for that tank in particular, the growth seems to be just going crazy off the hook. So I think having an elevated pH, my pH is like in the range of 8.3 to 8.5 for both systems, you know, the low and the high. And it's a curse, you know, it's a blessing and a curse.
Absolutely.
Because you got some corals that grow way too fast.
Yeah.
And
I always make we've tried to make the distinction between people who are selling corals and people who are keeping corals for a lark, that, you know, when people say pH doesn't matter, we don't mean pH doesn't matter. We mean for the bulk of the people, it will make no difference. So don't bother, because who cares? But if you're doing what you're doing, taking dotting the I's and crossing the T's can make a huge difference. All right.
You know,
so go ahead.
lighting and the caulk washer. So, and I don't think it's terribly important to have to worry about keeping a stable alkalinity. I think that's I feel good if my alkalinity is between 8 and 10, and if it's bouncing
Perfect.
around in between that, then I'm not going to obsess about it.
Yeah, I think that's wise. Ben wants to know if you've ever had any people approach you for building a system, and what you did with that.
Yeah, that's one of my little part of the business model is doing some consulting. So I haven't actually gone out on site and built any systems for folks, but I've done some consulting with individuals depending on what they need help with, whether it's advice on what equipment to add to a new tank build, or what type of tank to order if they're running like a custom tank, how big. I always try to advise people to go as wide as possible with a reef tank, because I think it's such a cool dimension, the depth in terms of the aquascaping.
For sure.
So yeah, but that would not be my thing, to be out and about traveling around and trying to build systems. I'll leave that up to you, Ben.
Right on. All right, so we got time for a beef or two, short ones. Want to throw out, because this isn't your show and because this is our show, where you can say anything and we don't care. Is there a beef that you might have that you would not talk about on your show because of the because you want people to like you and we're just idiots?
I mean, I think I've talked about some of my beefs on the show. I mean, I think one beef that I've talked about is why is it so freaking hard to get a reliable phosphate, test result from the phosphate test kit? Why is it so freaking hard? I mean, and it's been explained to me, but why hasn't somebody invented something where you could actually, have confidence in the numbers that you're getting from a test kit? I mean, I've used the Hannah Checkers, I've used the Milwaukee test kit. Now I've got a Hawk test kit that seems pretty darn good. But I had a situation where I had my test kits were reading 0 phosphates. I was like, oh, I got to start dosing a lot of phosphate because I've got 0 phosphates according to these test kits. And then I get an ICP test back, and I was like, what the hell? I mean, it's like 0.2, 0.15 in terms of the phosphate reading that I was getting on the tank. So, I was dosing a shitload of phosphate on into the tank, and a couple of my corals browned out, which I'm pretty sure was due to the high phosphate that I was just dosing into that tank.
And what were you testing with?
I think at that point I was using a Milwaukee test kit. I can't remember the name of it, but
shit, man.
Yeah. So why is it so tough to get a phosphate test kit that could actually?
I'll tell you, I hate all testing now. Because going down the rabbit hole of trying to get a consistent test, there's a problem with every test kit. So I might be moving away from the Hawk DR9 890 and just trying checkers for a little while, because that's gets me on the playing field of what everyone else kind of is doing. And I can't use the titration because I don't see the color well enough. So that always just made me really angry. But now there might be a problem. I got to follow up on it. There might be an issue with one of the tests on the Hawk that I'm using. So I just want, I don't even care what any of the numbers are, right? I just want it to be testing in a range reliably, a ballpark over repeatability rather than accuracy. But I'm with you, man.
I mean, years ago when I had my 225-gallon tank in Connecticut, which was a very successful tank, I think it was a Reef Central tank of the month. It was like chock full of corals, and I never tested for phosphate.
Right.
I never tested for magnesium. I test for alkalinity, calcium, nitrate, and the salinity and the temperature, and that was about it. I didn't, there was no ICP test back then, and just didn't really was on my radar.
I am so excited to see what of this pans out. Nitrate was the devil, and then RoaPhos became available, and then phosphate was the devil, and now every element is the devil. So I'm really interested to see in 10 years what actually if anything falls out of that solution and really sticks, because it's hilarious. Ben and I were talking about this the other day, that, you know, back to kalkwasser, back to dirty tanks. The cycle just churns around, and we pick up some things as it moves forward. But it's back to Barstow. But it's really interesting. It will be really interesting to see what sticks. Anything else you want to say, and then we'll let you go?
I mean, that kind of like dovetails on another, beef in terms of, I think people are leaning too heavily on numbers. You talked about that. And I think people are also leaning too heavily on automation. I'm not a big believer in a lot of tank automation. I think that it's just, you're asking for a lot of trouble. I mean, automatic water changes just scare the shit out of me, in terms of that sort of thing. So
I think you're just tossing around. You're just changing the danger. The danger is all the same. It's just whatever you're comfortable with, taking the danger. You just have to pay attention to different things. And I'll tell you, I'm gonna do this quick beef because it's hilarious, and you open the door. Most problems with automation are user error. So I was now setting up the spawning stuff. So I got to go and do all this weird code in the Apex to make the season tables change so the light and the heat changes. I couldn't get the skylights to be working on the season table, and it was driving me crazy. Like, I wrote a whole post on the Neptune users group and was like, what's going on? Is there a problem with the sky? And I wrote that at night, and then I woke up the next morning and spent about 3 hours going through everything, because that's how you that's how you find out problems in your reef tank, right? You just methodically go through it again and again. And I was looking at Jamie Craggs' paper and looking at the code that I had on this system and looking at the code at the Academy system. And I was going down, I was going down. I went, wait a second. And there's 3 lines of code, and it says if RT, then sunrise. If RT, then midday. And then if RT, then sunset. It can't be in that order. It has to be if RT, then sunrise. If RT, then sunset. If RT, then midday. And I had just transposed the 2 because I thought that's how it should be. And it took me 30 hours. But it was like, that's on my end. So anyway,
there's a lot of trip wires in this hobby now.
And I love the automatic water change. Love it. Love it. We'll have to have you back on and talk about that some more.
Doesn't scare the crap out of you.
Yeah, no, it scared the crap out of me for a long time, and now I think it's the best thing ever. But you have to know, you have to get it, you have to understand the philosophy of it, you have to understand what you're trying to do, and you have to understand what to watch out for. So it's just my big thing with water changes is like, it's more of like to get rid of detritus. That's kind of like what my big point of the and I used to do water changes to like replenish trace elements, but now that's something that I've learned is probably not going to totally be sufficient in terms of replenishing traces. So I'm dosing traces at this point. But I guess you got to evolve as a reef keeper. Yeah, I think, and Ben and I were talking about this the other day. I was talking with Terrence Fugazi on the phone about this, that you've got to. You need to have a philosophy that makes sense in your head. And that's all that really matters. You can change it as things go on. But if you're running on a philosophy that has gaps in your head, you're probably going to have problems. So, there's a million ways to skin a reef. And, someone like you, I'm going to listen to about what you're doing because I know you have a philosophy and you stick to it. But you change it when you need to. It's the willy-nilly recipe following philosophies that make me the most nervous. Yep. You can't be just kind of grasping at straws and trying 3-4 different things at once. You got to kind of just I find you got to be very systematic in reef keeping. You've got to just have a and do things slow. That's the best. What's the saying? Nothing good happens in reef keeping fast. Nothing good happens fast in a reef tank. 100%. CompuServe Dave's and before.
Hey, thank you, Beefers, for listening. Hopefully I'm not freezing up. Sorry about the internet connection. And thank you so much, Keith, for your time. We want to have you back again to poke at you some more. Check us out on the reefbeefpodcast.com. Become a member. Thank you, saltwateraquarium.com. And thank you very much, Keith Berkelhamer, for your time.
And go check out reefbum.com, right? That's where they can get all your stuff.
Reefbum.com, yeah.
Reefbum.com.
And don't forget to subscribe to my YouTube channel.
That's right. The media mogul empire of ReefBum.
Yeah, let's see. It's probably small, but let's see if we could give him a beef bump.
A beef
Oh,
bump.
yeah. Could use a beef bump these days.
All right, Keith.
Well, you know, I'll get the beef bump when I get you guys back on.
Right
Yeah.
on, man. All right, thank
All right,
you.
guys.
I know it's late there. Have a great night, and we'll chat
Thanks,
soon.
guys. Appreciate it. It was a lot of fun.
This episode of Reef Beef was hosted by Rich Ross and Ben Johnson, produced by Rich Ross and Snowman, directed and edited by Snowman. And we'd like to thank our prime and gold level beefers, Pedro, Scott Z, Scott O, and Rich P, and all the other beefers for making these shows possible.
Oh my God, he's still here.
It's the most awkward part of
This is
Zoom.
when you're supposed to say something bad about me.
Yeah.
Well, no, we're going to wait till you disappear first.
God,
Okay.
that son of a bitch
Let me
wouldn't
just
stop
plug.
talking.
Have a good night. Oh my God, that son of a bitch would not stop talking.
Yeah. Oh, you leave my daughter alone, Keith Berkelhamer.
Pronounce it right.
Because you just
Yeah,
got
but that's
beef
quite
rolled.
defensive of him.
Yeah, he got
Beef rolled.
beef rolled. Screw you. Screw you, Snowman. It's gonna be a long ass
You're gonna
recording.
listen to
What?
Doobie Brothers.
What?
I've been listening to Doobie Brothers a lot, Richard.
Why?
I don't know, like, because it was just a tad before my time, but I remember rolling around in the car when seatbelts weren't the law, and my dad like blasting Doobie Brothers. He was probably high.
In the back of the station wagon?
Yeah, he was probably back there too.
Oh, backwater, keep on rolling. Now that Ben is gone, I can tell you the truth about Ben. Ben is not a human being. Ben is part.
Does that work?
Hey, you're back. Excellent. Shut up. Stop texting me. God. I have some terrible news for you.
What happened?
We have to start that again.
What did I do?
No, it wasn't you. It was my Apex.
Awesome.
Over there is a big Vornado fan that is responsible for evaporatively cooling this tank.
And it came on.
And it came on because that tank needs to be at like 74, it's at 75, 76 degrees right now. But I now turned it off so we can start again.
Thank you, Vapors.
Let's do that quickly again, but as pathetically as possible.
Oh, Jesus.
Yeah. It'll be easy for us. We're proud. We're proud. We're the beef.
Hey, Reef Beef, we cuss. So if you don't like cussing, don't listen.
Hey, podcast, cussing. Not for you, go away. Let's do every other word. Hey,
Reef
beef.
in
This
pod,
cast
we,
swear.
so
If
you
don't
like,
swearing,
then fuck off.
boom.
What is that?
That's my new overthruster.
21.1 gigawatts?
That's a different movie, but close.
Wait, is that from
It's my oscillation overthruster.
from freaking John Big Booty,
Yes.
Buckaroo Banzai,
Yes.
John Smallberries?
John Yaya.
When I
Parrott.
turned 15 years old, my mom, what's that? Oh, sweet. When I had my 15-year-old birthday, bonsai and eat imitation crab legs.
That's a good fucking birthday right there.